Hi guys, just starting our overhead focus flow. You'll need a TheraBand and a broomstick for today, so come align your backs. So we want feet hip distance apart, and we're going to work on our connection first of all. So we should be feeling connected underneath both our feet, underneath the lumbosacral junction, the TL junction, both shoulder blades and the back of the head. So we're going to start at the feet and we're going to try and get some better connection now. So you're just going to start to shift the weight from side to side until you feel like you've got equal pressure between your right and left foot. When you feel like you've got that pressure equally, pause, and then you're going to think about where you're feeling that connection. Are you feeling it underneath the outside of the foot or the inside of the foot? So if you're feeling it on the outside of the foot, what I want you to try and do is bring that inner arch down into connection with the floor by pushing the big toe into the floor. You're going to keep your knees pointing to the ceiling, your ankles neutral. If you're feeling it more on the inside of the foot, you're going to try and bring that outer arch down towards the floor, but keep the big toe connected. So knees in, stay facing the ceiling, ankles neutral. So once we've got our foot connection, move up to your lumbosacral junction, so junction between your lower back and your pelvis. And we're going to start to peel the spine away from the floor, taking the pelvis into an anterior tilt. And then you're going to reverse peel the spine, taking the pelvis into a posterior tilt. So you're going to go anterior, posterior, lumbar extension, lumbar flexion, going back and forwards until you feel like you've got the midpoint between the two end ranges, and your lower back should feel connected with the floor when you're in that midpoint. So you shouldn't be able to get your hands underneath your back. Pelvis should be neutral, lower back should be neutral, and your lumbosacral junction should be feeling more in connection. Then you're going to move to your TL junction, so junction between your upper back and your lower back. And we're going to think of our rib cage and pelvis like they're the pages of a book. We want the pages to be closed, we don't want them to be open. So when we have an open book appearance, you might feel like your ribs are flaring, you might have some lumbar extension. So if you put your hands on your lower ribs and you feel like your ribs are sticking up, then you've probably got an open book, so you want to be trying to pull the ribs and pelvis down into connection like you're closing the pages of a book. So your pelvis and rib cage are parallel with each other, and this is what we want to maintain throughout this entire flow. So whenever we're taking the arms above the head, ribs and pelvis stay connected. So now your TL junction should be feeling more connected with the floor. Then you're going to move up to your shoulder blades. So they want to be equal from side to side, so just shuffle your weight from side to side until you feel like you've got equal pressure beneath your right and left shoulder blade. And then your shoulders themselves want to be neutral. So if you're feeling like your shoulders are up by your ears or pushing forwards, what we want to do is try and bring the shoulders back down towards the floor. Don't pin them to the floor, don't pull them together. Just bring them slightly down towards the floor. You're going to externally rotate and depress the shoulder blade down towards the back pocket on the same side. And the back of the head now is going to push straight down towards the floor. So look up towards the ceiling. Try not to let the neck extend or come forwards. So we're pushing straight down and you should feel those muscles at the front of the neck come alive. Okay, so once we've got our connection, put one hand on your chest, one hand on your tummy. And what we're going to think about first is just trying to get the breath into the right order. So as we take a breath in, you should be feeling the hand on the tummy lift on the breath in, and lowering on the breath out. Breathe in, feel the hand on the tummy lift. Breathe out, feel the hand on the tummy lower. Hand on the chest shouldn't be moving anywhere, that should stay completely still. So we just want to try and close the mind off from whatever else is going on in the world, and just pull it to our breath and pull it to thinking about that hand on the tummy, lifting on the breath in and lowering on the breath out. Okay, just do a couple more breaths. This does get easier with time, so the more you practice this, the easier it gets to get your breath in the right order. Okay, so once your breath's in the right order, put your hands around your waist, and we're now going to create our 360-degree breath. So what I mean by that is when you're taking a breath in, what you should be feeling is all the muscles all the way around the abdominal wall expand outwards. So hands around the waist, fingertips into the front of the abdomen, web of the hands around the sides of the waist, thumbs digging into the back. And just think about what you can feel. And if you're not feeling anything activating underneath your hands, then I want you to cough. You'll feel those muscles expand, and now I want you to think about those muscles lifting and pushing your hands away as you breathe in, and then relaxing as you breathe out. Breathe in through your nose, out through your mouth, through pursed lips. Imagine you're blowing through a straw. And you should be feeling this equally from front to back and from side to side. So if there's anywhere that you're particularly struggling with, give it a prod, give it a poke, try and wake the muscles up, cough again if you need to. Let your brain know where the muscles are, and then just try and focus completely on those muscles and trying to get those muscles to push your hands away as you breathe in, and relax on the breath out. So a couple more of those breaths. Okay, so we've got our 360 breath now. We're going to work on the brace. So the brace is an outward push, it's not a clench, it's not a tense, and you're not sucking your belly button towards your spine. So you're going to create your 360-degree breath, and then before you take your breath out, you're going to do an outward push, like you're imagining that you're about to fart. Now try not to let the muscles completely relax as you're breathing out. Keep that activation throughout the breath in and out now, breathing in through your nose and out through your mouth, through pursed lips. So throughout the flow, you want to be creating your 360-degree breath, and then when you're doing things that need more stabilisation, you're going to need to be able to create varying degrees of this brace. Okay, so we've got our brace now. We're going to start to do some shoulder flexion, focusing on keeping the ribs and pelvis connected. So just start by doing single arms first of all. And as you take your shoulder back into flexion, you're going to externally rotate and slightly abduct the shoulder at the same time. So you're going to turn your thumb down towards the floor. So single arms, taking the shoulder as far back as you can, but keeping your ribs and pelvis connected. So if you put one hand on your ribs, as you're taking the opposite arm back, and you'll be able to feel whether your ribs are starting to lift. And if you feel like your ribs are lifting, try and just pause at the point you start to feel your rib lifting. Take a breath in, connect the ribs, and then on the breath out, you're going to try and lower your arm a little bit further back. Try not to just tense the tummy muscles as well, so you're not just squeezing your front abs to pull the ribs down. You're trying to use those oblique muscles around the side of the abdominal wall to bring the ribs and pelvis into connection. And then take both arms back. So you'll need to concentrate a little bit more on keeping the ribs and pelvis in connection. Remember to externally rotate, taking the thumbs down towards the floor, creating that space in the shoulder joint to get into that full shoulder flexion. And then you can grab hold of your TheraBand, wrap it around your hands so that you're not clenching your fist around it, so that you've got it around the hand. And then you're going to take one shoulder into flexion. And then take the opposite arm into flexion. Again, focusing on keeping the ribs and pelvis connected. Obviously, the more resistance you've got on the TheraBand, the more challenging it'll be. Still creating that external rotation in the shoulder as you're taking the shoulder into flexion. And then, keeping your hands in your TheraBand, you're going to start to take both your arms back. And you're going to have to really try and think about what's happening and focus on how it feels. Think about keeping your ribs and pelvis connected. Again, if you start to feel your ribs lifting, you're going to pause, take a breath in, create your breath and your brace, and just try and get your arms a little bit further back on your breath out. And then pause with your arms over your head as far back as you can have them. And then you're going to start to lift one leg in the air and then take the opposite leg in the air. So just alternating legs, keeping the ribs and pelvis connected. So what we don't want to happen now is for the lumbar spine to start extending. So we're keeping that rib and pelvic connection. This movement's just coming from the hips now. Just a couple more single leg, and then we're going to go into double legs. So you're going to need to create your breath and your brace. And then we're lifting the legs up off the floor. If your lower back's not feeling too good at the minute, you might just want to just carry on doing single legs. So lifting and lowering, keeping that rib and pelvic connection. If you can't get your arms all the way back, that's fine. Just lift your arms, your thumbs off the floor. We only want to have the arms as far back as you can do, keeping your ribs and pelvis connected. Just do one more of these, and then bring your legs up into your 3-month supine. Bring your arms back down, and we're going to do some single arm shoulder flexion again. So single arm shoulder flexion, but in this 3-month supine position now. So feet are going to be higher than your knees, ankles neutral, knees over your hips, hips externally rotated and abducted. And we're creating external rotation and flexion in the shoulder with a bit of abduction, so taking the arm out to the side a little bit as well. And then you're going to do double arms. So take both arms back as far as you can, keeping your ribs and pelvis connected. Keep thinking about that 360 breath embrace. Keeping that lower back flat on the floor. And then again, we're going to pause with the arms above the head and do some single leg toe taps. If you need a little rest, you can bring your knees up to your chest. Keep breathing 360 degrees. And then add in some double toe taps if you can. So breathe, 360, nice smooth cylinder around the abdominal wall, keeping your ribs and pelvis nice and connected. Couple more. And pop the TheraBand to the side. Bring your knees into your chest, give your hips a little rest. Then we're going to go back into the 3-month supine. Arms up to the sky, fingers up to the sky. Lift your head slightly, look to the direction you're going to turn and roll. And then come back onto your back, take your arms back into shoulder flexion, keeping the ribs and pelvis connected. And then roll the opposite way. So as we're turning, we want to think of having our Lego body, so shoulders and pelvis moving at the same time. So what we don't want to happen is for the pelvis to go first and then the shoulder, or shoulder then pelvis. And we're controlling this movement, so you're not just going to land heavily on your side or throw yourself back, and we're keeping a nice straight spine as we go. So we don't want a banana spine, so when you get on your side you should have this little gap between your side and the floor. Keep breathing, 360 degrees, don't forget to breathe. And then what we're going to do now is we're going to roll onto our side, up into lower oblique sit, up into high oblique sit, lift into the air, take the arms up into the air, and then slowly lower down, back down, high oblique sit, low oblique sit, side, 3-month supine, roll the opposite way to low oblique sit, high, lift, and take the arms up into shoulder flexion. And then back down, So you're going to go side to side, nice and slow and controlled. And if you want, you can add in your TheraBand, so you can wrap it around your hands again. Down onto our side, up, through. Make sure that as we're going into our lower oblique sit, high oblique sit, we keep the shoulder active, so we're not letting the shoulder push forwards or lift up. Not enough space in this room to do this. And as we take the arms up into the air, we are concentrating on keeping the ribs and pelvis connected. And then come down into your high oblique sit, and we're just going to rotate the hips, so we're going to get a bit of hip rotation, lift, shoulder flexion, down, rotate to the opposite side, shoulder flexion. And with the lifts and lowers, we want to be nice and slow, don't rush the movement, because you want to protect your knees when you're in this lowering phase. And when we're in this tall sit, make sure we're nice and tall so you're not rounding through the upper back, so nice and lengthened. Remember, as we're taking the shoulders up into flexion, create that external rotation and abduction as well, so taking the thumbs backwards. And then I'll get around to the other side again. Going to lower back down, rotate round, lift up into a high kneel, and then take the arms up into flexion. And then down, stabilize, back down, rotate through, lift, shoulder flexion, slowly down, rotate round. Oh, I missed out to high kneel then, so into high kneel, shoulder flexion, stabilize, down, slowly through to the opposite side, lift, high kneel, shoulder flexion, keep doing that, from side to side. When you come into your high kneel position, make sure you've got your pelvis correct, so pelvis level with the floor, we're not too narrow with the foot. So even though we're not going up into a stand yet, we want to make sure we have a good position. And then you're going to come up into your high kneel. Okay, pelvis level, neutral pelvis, and then we're just going to take one arm up and then the opposite arm. swapping from side to side, keeping ribs and pelvis connected. And then we're going to go up into a stand. So pelvis connected, level with the floor, neutral pelvis, neutral lower back, knee tracking second and third toe, lean into that front foot, and then we're just going to stand and take the arms up into flexion and then back down. And stand up into flexion and slowly back down. So concentrate on position of your pelvis. So as we're standing, we want to make sure the pelvis doesn't shoot to the side and the knee doesn't collapse, and as we lower him back down, we want to make sure we don't rotate and become unbalanced. So we're going to stand, arms up, slowly down. Maintain that knee tracking the second and third toe as you come up. And as you take your arms up into flexion, externally rotate and abduct. And then I want you to grab hold of your broomstick. Put your arms above your head. So as we're taking the arms up, make sure, have a feel, make sure the ribs and pelvis are in connection. And then we're going to take the leg back and slowly lower down and come back up. Slowly down. So make sure when you're lowering yourself down, you don't take your back leg too narrow. So you want to still be able to create space. Lower down for a count of 3 to 4 seconds. Okay, just do a couple more on this side. Okay, pop the broomstick down, grab hold of your TheraBand, wrap it around your hands again, so create some tension, and then we're going to pick up the imaginary ball, pick up, overhead, rotate around to the opposite side, and then go side to side, picking up your imaginary ball, keeping the ribs and pelvis connected. So really try and think about what's happening and whether you can feel the ribs starting to lift. And as we're doing this, maintain that neutral pelvis and the pelvis level with the floor. I'm going from side to side, knee tracking second and third toe. And then we're going to rotate around the opposite side. And just come into your high kneel, foot not too narrow, and then we're just going to alternate arms into shoulder flexion. So think about what this feels like. Think about creating as much range through the shoulder as possible whilst maintaining like length through the spine as well, and maintaining that rib and pelvic connection. Create that external rotation and abduction in the shoulder as you are taking the shoulder back into flexion. Just do a couple more. And then from your high kneel position, we're going to go up into a stand and take both arms up into flexion. So we're going to pelvis level with the floor, knee tracking second and third toe, stand, arms up, arms down, and slowly lower down. Again, we're maintaining that knee tracking second and third toe, pelvis facing forwards, level with the floor. And just don't rush the movement. Really think about the way it feels. Keep the big toe connected with the floor. And I'm just going to do a few more without the broom, then we're going to grab hold of the broom. Okay, grab hold of your broom. Arms up, ribs down, shoulders set, and slowly come down. Stand back up. Maintain that neutral pelvis level with the floor, pelvis facing forwards, knee tracking second and third toe. Don't go too narrow with the back foot. Just do a couple more. Okay, put your broom down. Put your hands to the floor. Bring your front foot backwards into your bear. Lower down into your quadruped. And then come down into low quadruped. So something really important for getting your arms up over your head is your upper back mobility. And if you lack extension through the upper back, it can reduce your shoulder range of movement. So we're just going to work on that a little bit. So we want our forearms in our diamond shape, middle finger in line with the forearms, the wrists aren't deviated, elbows in line with the ears. You're going to tilt your pelvis backwards and forwards. Find that neutral pelvis. Activate through the shoulders, so you're going to push the floor away with your forearms, create external rotation and depression with the shoulder. And then if you are someone who is quite rounded, then you are going to want to try and bring your upper back closer to the floor without going into lumbar extension. So we want to keep that neutral pelvis, neutral lower back, and try and extend, pulling the upper back down towards the floor. If you're someone who's quite flat through your upper back, you're going to want to think about pushing the floor away and creating space between your shoulder blades, keeping your neck in line with the spine, so your neck's not going into neck extension or pushing forwards. So think about pushing the floor away, think about that distance between shoulder and elbow getting lengthened and spreading the shoulder blades apart. And breathe into it. So 360-degree breath. Feel that mobilization through that upper back. Keep pushing the floor away, lengthening through the spine. Keep those shoulders active, don't let them lift up by your ears. Five, 4, 3, 2, 1. Come up into quadruped. Make sure you've got your neutral pelvis. Make sure you're creating that length through your upper back, that extension, and then we're just gonna hinge the hips backwards, so we're flexing the shoulders, so go as far back as you can, and we're creating as much shoulder flexion as we can, folding the hip, and you're going to push the floor sort of with the hands at the same time. So imagine you're trying to pull your hands back towards you, but they're not moving anywhere. And then extend the hip and extend the shoulder, maintaining that neutral pelvis, neutral lower back. And then flex again. So we're flexing back, flexing the shoulders, flexing the hips, flexing the knees. And breathe into it. Keep pushing the floor down with your hands, so you're activating through your shoulders. And then we're going to extend the hip, extend the shoulder, maintain neutral pelvis, neutral lower back. Go again. Flexing the hip, flexing the shoulders. Keep that length through the spine. And then in this position, just bring one hand backwards and just fully try and flex the opposite shoulder. So we should start to feel a stretch around the back of the shoulder now. So you're going to rotate a little bit towards the opposite side as well. So you can get a nice stretch underneath and around the back of the shoulder. And breathe into it. Keep your ribs and pelvis connected. Swap sides. Five, 4, 3, 2, 1. Then you're going to come up, back into your quadruped. Push the floor away with your hands. Find neutral, lengthen through the spine. Lift your knees off the floor. So you create your breath in your brace. So we're going into a bear. And then we're going to flex the hip. Taking the shoulders into flexion. So try and fold the body, lengthening through the spine. Ribs and pelvis connected. And then slowly hinge out of it. Back down, knees to the floor. And then you're going to flex back in your quadruped position. So shoulder flexion. And extend. Lift the knees off the floor into your bear. Hinge back and shoulder flexion. Keep lengthening through the upper back. Imagine that upper back trying to come closer to the floor still. And then extend. Slowly lower your knees down towards the floor. Hinge your hips back now in your quadruped. Shoulders flexion. Go as far back as you can. Pushing the floor down with your hands. And then extend the hips. Put the feet to the floor, lift the knees. Flex the hip, flex the shoulder. And pause in that position. Concentrating on keeping the ribs and pelvis connected. Folding the body, lengthening through the spine. Keep your neck nice and long, don't extend your neck. Breathe into it. And then start to walk your hands backwards into your squat position. And then grab hold of your TheraBand, wrap it around your hands, and then just see if you can take the arms up into flexion and down. So we're in this deep squat, shoulders into flexion. Create that abduction and external rotation, and try and think about that extension through the upper back. Let's do one more. Then we'll need to stand up, so keep the arms above the head and stand. And now think about that neutral pelvis, neutral lower back. I've just ripped my TheraBand. That's annoying. Okay, keep the shoulders above into flexion. Think about rib and pelvic connection, neutral pelvis, neutral lower back, and slowly come down into your squat. If you want to do a few just regular squats to start with, just thinking about maintaining neutral, just to get the movement right first, lengthening through the spine. Making sure we don't fall into that flexion through the upper back and into extension in the lower back. So we want to do nice controlled movements. That's fine. And then if you want to then add in your shoulder flexion. Control that movement through the pelvis and the lower back. Think about your breath. Think about your brace. Think about travelling down centrally. So have a think about whether you feel like you're going to one side more than the other. Just do a couple more of these if you can. Arms above the head. If you can't do that movement, maintaining neutral pelvis, neutral lower back with your arms above your head, go just as far as you can, keeping neutral pelvis, or you can just have your arms up into flexion in the standing and then bring them down into more extension in the squat. Right, okay guys. We're all done for today. Hope you enjoyed that. I will see you all soon. Sorry that my head was cut off for a little bit of this when I was standing. I'll make sure the camera is much better next time. Right, bye-bye.